They zipped her into a sweaty mascot suit at her own great-grandson's birthday. "Don't fuss, Grandma," her daughter laughed. "It's not like you're good for much else." Frances danced for 3 hours in fur and foam, cheeks burning behind the mask. By the end of the week, she'd pulled every deed, froze every account, and canceled the family trust. The next party came with cocktails and carpeted steps, an estate sale with no heirs in sight. They made her a prop. She made them history. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The head was heavier than she expected. June stood in the laundry room, staring at the oversized mascot costume splayed across the folding table like a dissected animal. Yellow faux fur, sagging paws, a tail with a safety pin reattached where the stitching had come loose. The head, an enormous grinning chipmunk with glassy plastic eyes, looked straight through her. "Grandma, we're ready for you," Caleb called from the patio, his voice lazy and detached, like he was reminding her to bring napkins. She reached for the suit. Outside, the party was in full swing. Pastel streamers whipped in the wind, a bounce house deflated slowly in the afternoon heat, and a woman with a clipboard directed the face painter to move closer to the snack zone. Marla hovered near the drink table in a coral sundress, her makeup immune to the sun. June stepped out in costume. Applause erupted from the lawn. "Yay, the chipmunk's here," a mom cheered, lifting her phone to record. June lifted a gloved paw and waved. Marla was at her side in seconds, lips tight behind a smile. She leaned in close and hissed through her teeth, "Just stay in character, okay? It keeps the kids happy." Behind the plastic grin of the chipmunk, June blinked. Caleb wandered past, sipping from a bottle of something craft and citrusy. "It's tradition, Grandma," he said, not looking at her like it explained everything. So she danced, she waved, she crouched down for photos and spun in clumsy circles while children squealed and tugged at her paws. The inside of the suit was humid and smelled faintly of old dryer sheets and regret. The heat was pressing in from all sides, her sweat pooling under the plastic seams. Through the muffled padding of the chipmunk head she caught slivers of conversation. "So cute she still does this. Honestly, it's all she's good for these days." A soft pop. The balloon arch had lost a segment. Laughter. Another kid screamed "chipmunk" and clung to her leg. June reached down, patted the child's back and stood up slowly. Her knees ached. No one offered water. No one asked if she needed to sit. Time swirled, slow and punishing. At some point the music cut out, a Bluetooth hiccup. She used the moment to excuse herself, wobbling inside the house like a defeated parade float. In the cool quiet of the hallway, she peeled the head off first. Her hair was plastered to her scalp. Her blouse clung to her back. She closed the laundry room door behind her and slid the rest of the costume off in pieces. The gloves, the tail, the legs that smelled like storage. "Jesus, Junie," came a voice. "They really had you out there like that." She turned to see Elsie, arms crossed, leaning in the doorway like a judge at the gallows. June didn't answer. She was too busy catching her breath, watching herself in the dusty mirror above the dryer. The streaks of sweat, the red marks on her neck, the way her hands trembled as she folded the paws and laid them flat like something sacred. "I told you not to let them do this again," Elsie said softly, stepping into the room. "You said last year was the last time." June nodded once. Then slowly she looked over at the chipmunk head resting on the washer, still smiling, wide-eyed, stupid. "They don't see me anymore," she whispered. "They see something they can dress up. Roll out, put away." Elsie stepped closer, reached for a towel. "You want me to get you a glass of—" "No," June said, her voice low, calm but sharper now. "But I want you to go home and check your spare room. The one with the lock on it." Elsie blinked. "You serious?" June looked up. Her expression was stone. "They think that's all I'm good for," she said, folding the tail with deliberate care. "So next time, I'll show them what I'm actually capable of." She turned back to the mirror. In the reflection, the chipmunk head loomed behind her, silly, innocent, oblivious. She slammed the dryer door shut. The party was still pulsing outside. Someone had turned the music back on, but June moved through the house like it was a museum no longer open to the public. The photographs along the hallway walls were glossy and framed. Tommy's first bath, Marla and Caleb at their vow renewal, a candid of Madison twirling in front of a vineyard, her mouth wide in staged laughter, but nowhere, in any of them, was June. Even the group shots had been trimmed or cropped, her face edited out like a detail someone had forgotten to remove in Photoshop. She stopped at the kitchen island and opened a drawer near the sink. Inside, beneath loose batteries and mismatched keys, was a packet of bank statements still folded in their original envelopes. She slid one out and opened it slowly, her fingers deliberate. The amounts were larger than she remembered. Recurring monthly transfers. Caleb Teller Home Advance, Family Utility Share, Marla Events Operating. Names she'd never authorized attached to accounts she never touched. Her lips tightened. She moved quietly down the hall toward the guest room she was allowed to use. Not a bedroom, not officially. There was no nameplate, no framed photo outside the door like there was for Tommy's room or the reading nook Marla had made out of the hallway closet, just a plain white door with a stiff handle and a latch that stuck slightly in the summer. Inside, the room smelled faintly of fabric softener and lemon disinfectant. 2 suitcases rested beneath the narrow twin bed. Her purse sat untouched on the dresser. She reached under the mattress and pulled out the house deed, crisp, notarized, her name alone at the top. June ran her thumb down the edge of the paper. Still mine. The doorbell rang. Voices rose outside. Someone calling for cake. She slipped the deed back under the mattress, retrieved her reading glasses, and sat down at the tiny writing desk she used when she needed privacy. The wood creaked. She typed a short message to Mr. Becker. "Can we meet Monday?" Quietly. "Just you and me." She pressed send. A moment later, her phone buzzed. Of course. "Everything all right?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood, walked to the closet, and opened the lockbox hidden behind an old shoebox labeled winter scarves. Inside were velvet pouches, jewelry boxes, a small blue tin containing her mother's wedding band, and the cameo brooch Elsie once told her to keep hidden from Madison. She packed each piece carefully, not rushed, not anxious, into a tote bag lined with tissue paper and sealed it with duct tape. No one would think to look inside it. It looked like donation junk. Outside the window, she saw Caleb tossing a beach ball toward Tommy. Laughter again. A normal family afternoon, filtered through a lens no one asked her to be part of. Her phone buzzed again. "Mr. Becker, your trust is intact. Would you like to reassign beneficiaries?" She stared at the message for several seconds, then replied, "Yes, starting Monday." She turned, took the bag in one hand, and walked it straight to the front door. She stepped out just as Marla was scolding the magician for being too corny. No one noticed her. June crossed the driveway, tote bag under her arm, and kept walking until she reached Elsie's Buick parked halfway down the block. Elsie leaned over and unlocked the door. "Well?" June placed the bag in the back seat. "We're just getting started." A shadow moved in the corner of her eye, small footsteps. She turned. Tommy stood barefoot at the edge of the front lawn, holding something behind his back. He shuffled forward, pulled out a crumpled sheet of construction paper covered in red crayon scribbles. A stick figure wore a giant round head with oversized ears. "Thanks for dancing," he said. June took the paper and knelt slowly, knees stiff. "You're welcome, sweetheart." Tommy looked over his shoulder toward the backyard. "Is Grandma mad?" She paused. "No," she said softly. "Grandma's just remembering what belongs to her." Tommy smiled, oblivious, and skipped away. June stood, the crayon card in her hand, its edges damp with sweat from his fingers. She turned it over. On the back was one uneven word, letters backwards, June. The E had been left off. She smiled without joy and walked back inside. Monday came with the quiet precision June favored. Overcast skies, no family around, and a fresh yellow legal pad beside her on the kitchen table. Mr. Becker arrived right on time. He parked at the curb in a dull gray sedan that hadn't changed since the Clinton years, adjusted his tie in the rear view, and knocked gently, not the impatient rapping she'd grown used to from delivery drivers and Marla's assistants. "Coffee," she offered. He held up a thermos. Always prepared. They sat across from each other in the formal dining room, the one with the tall mahogany cabinet she hadn't let anyone open in 5 years. June slid a folder across the table. Inside, photos, receipts, handwritten notes from a spiral-bound notebook. Itemized history, not sentiment. "I'd like to initiate a full estate liquidation," she said calmly. "No family notification, private vendor, paid in cash." Mr. Becker didn't flinch, just opened the folder, nodding as he flipped through pages. "And the proceeds? Split between the scholarship fund you'll set up next quarter, and a discretionary trust. Elsie's name only." He gave a single slow blink of respect. "I take it you've had enough." "I had enough years ago," she replied. "I'm just finally documenting it." They walked room by room. June moved with a steady rhythm, not clinical, not emotional, just exact. The dining table was first. She opened its hidden center leaf, showed him the original brass latches, bought it in 1978, paid cash, no damage, 2 refinishes. Mr. Becker photographed each angle with a small point-and-shoot camera. Impeccable shape. She moved to the curio cabinet. The Wedgwood set stays, the crystal goes. That's from Caleb's engagement party. The one they never paid me back for. They cataloged everything. Bedroom sets, bookcases, framed watercolors from a Santa Fe trip no one remembered. June knew the story behind each one, but she didn't speak them aloud. Stories were the currency her family liked to spend and forget. She was calculating in objects now. By the time the sun hit the patio, Elsie had arrived, not to interfere, but to witness. She leaned against the doorway with her iced tea, watching June kneel in front of a cedar chest, pulling out hand-stitched quilts wrapped in tissue. "You're going to feel 50 pounds lighter after this," she murmured. June didn't look up. Weight's not the problem. Ownership is. Halfway through the parlor they paused for tea. The good kind, peach Earl Grey in china cups from June's grandmother, the ones Marla always said were too fussy for guests. That's when the back door opened. Marla entered like she always did. No knock, no pause, heels too loud on the tile. She wore sunglasses indoors and carried a tote with her company logo embroidered in gold. "Oh good, you're here," she chirped. "I was thinking let's just do Tommy's next birthday here again. You've already got the yard, and the bounce house guy gives us a discount for repeats." June didn't flinch. "It's already booked." Marla froze. "What?" "The house," June said, folding a linen napkin and setting it beside her cup. "I've scheduled it for another event." "Well, we'll just work around it, right?" Marla's voice cracked slightly, then hardened. "You know how much the kids love this place." Elsie stirred her tea without looking up. "They love the space, not the woman who owns it." Marla ignored her. June stood, not abruptly, just deliberately. "If you want to plan something for Tommy, I'd suggest a park. They're free, and more fitting." A beat of silence passed. Marla's jaw twitched, but she didn't respond. She spun around and exited as quickly as she came, the sound of her heels tapping away like a clock winding down. A few minutes later, June's phone buzzed. A text from Caleb. "Mom says you're acting strange. Everything okay?" She stared at the message, thumb hovering over the screen. Then she typed back, "Acting? No, just finally doing." She didn't hit send. Not yet. Instead, she scrolled down to the photo she'd just taken, a shot of the dining table empty for the first time in decades. No centerpiece, no clutter, just sunlight and space. She pressed her finger down to attach it to the message. Then she added one final line, "You might want to start packing." The backyard had always been June's domain. She was the one who'd planted the hybrid roses along the fence, added the stone path to keep the grandkids from trampling the grass, and arranged the patio lights so they gave a soft amber glow without attracting moths. But now it looked like a showroom for a party catalog she hadn't approved. Folding tables stacked in the garage, inflatable signage stuffed behind the recycling bins, a roll of branded vinyl that read "Tommy turns 6," laid across her rose trellis like a banner on a conquered castle. She stepped back inside and picked up the burner phone, a cheap prepaid flip model she'd bought at a gas station in Carson City. No apps, no sync, no connection to the family's shared cloud. She scrolled through her call history. Becker, Elsie, Pacific Estate Liquidators. She dialed the last one again. The woman on the other end, Denise, answered in a clipped voice that matched her no-nonsense Yelp reviews. "We're confirmed," Denise said. "Setup begins Sunday evening, 6 o'clock sharp, contract locked, cash confirmed." June nodded. "And you've got the full item list? All cataloged. Your directions are crystal." She hung up and opened her drawer of receipts. Every payment was made on separate prepaid cards, purchased from 3 different stores, across 3 different towns, all physical, all in person, no digital trail, just the way June liked it. By afternoon, she was on the patio with Elsie, sipping lemonade from plastic tumblers while watching the gardener replace a section of dead grass near the sandbox. The sun was unkind that day, dry, sharp, merciless. "You're quiet," Elsie said, not looking up from her crossword. June didn't answer right away. Instead, she nodded toward the corner of the yard where a box of foam costume pieces lay half-collapsed under a warped folding table. "They gave me those," she said, voice low, "and told me to smile, that it was tradition, that I was good at it." Elsie followed her gaze, eyebrows lifting. June continued, "That's when I started planning." A long silence passed between them. The ice in Elsie's cup shifted with a soft clink. "Since they gave you foam paws," she said, more statement than question. June finally looked at her and smiled. "Exactly." Later that evening, Caleb came by with a Tupperware of lemon bars, acting like nothing had shifted in the tectonics of their family. "I brought extras from Madison's test batch," he said, setting them on the counter without asking if she wanted them. "She's thinking of making dessert tables part of the baby shower packages." June gave him a polite nod. "That's ambitious." He leaned against the fridge, glancing at the empty dining room again. "You're still not mad about Mom, right? She just gets high-strung around event stuff." "I'm not mad," June said, calmly. "I just remember things better than she expects me to." Caleb smiled awkwardly, then scratched his neck. "Look, Grandma, I think maybe you should relax a little about the past. You've got the house, you've got your space, nobody's trying to take anything from you." June watched him for a beat, then said, "They don't need to take it, they just keep forgetting who owns it." Caleb's smile disappeared. He picked up the Tupperware and fidgeted with the lid, then wandered back out, muttering something about checking on the lawn guy. The next day, Marla called a quick backyard meeting to go over the entertainment timeline. "We're booking the magician from the ice cream truck party," she said, fanning herself with an old auction flyer June had left on the counter. "Kids love him. And we're doing a theme this year, Tommy's World. Cute, right?" June stayed quiet. Marla gave her a pointed look. "You don't need to be in the photos, I know that makes you uncomfortable." June blinked slowly, then gave a soft, gracious smile. "Of course, I'll stay out of the way." Marla looked satisfied and flitted off, shouting reminders at the rental company through the screen door. June walked into the kitchen, opened the drawer where she kept the family camera, and pulled out a tiny handheld audio recorder instead. The one she used back when she was cataloging interviews for the oral history section at the library. She clicked it on and held it in the air for a moment, facing the open window. Marla's voice echoed through the screen. "Let's keep Grandma clear of the center aisle. Nobody wants chipmunk flashbacks." Click. June slipped the recorder into her pocket and returned to her tea. 2 days. Just 2. And the lawn they thought was theirs would be tagged, inventoried, and stripped clean, under full legal protection. She stared out at the rose trellis, at the banner rippling slightly in the wind. Then slowly she reached over and sliced it in half with a pair of shears. The bounce house wheezed to life at 10:02 a.m. It gave off a low mechanical whine as it expanded in the morning heat, a red and blue plastic cathedral rising in the middle of June's lawn. Marla flitted around with a clipboard and a headset she didn't need, snapping at the balloon arch team and testing the wireless mic 3 separate times. Tommy wore a paper crown and carried a Nerf sword like royalty on Casual Friday. June sat in the shade under a pop-up canopy near the garage. A folding chair, her own bottle of water, sunglasses that made her look like she was watching a tennis match she didn't care about. No one asked her to help. No one even looked in her direction. An older guest passed by, a friend of Marla's from the community center, or maybe one of Madison's former co-workers. June couldn't tell anymore. The woman smiled politely. "Did you help put this together?" June sipped her water. "Not this one," she said with a nod. This one was all theirs. Across the yard, Caleb was trying to wrangle the magician's assistant, who was missing a box of props. Marla barked something about signage visibility. Madison hovered by the drink station, giggling too loud at someone's story while making sure everyone could see her new pastel manicure. It was almost noon when the first sound came. A low rumble, soft at first, then louder. A delivery truck turned the corner onto the street and coasted toward the house, unbranded, long, matte black. It pulled up to the curb and stopped with surgical precision. The backyard noise dipped. Not full silence, but a curious lull, like the wind holding its breath. June stood and removed her sunglasses. 2 uniformed workers hopped down from the cab, walked briskly to the rear, and flung open the doors. They began unloading. Stanchions with velvet ropes, collapsible tables, polished item stands. A dolly followed, loaded with black and silver auction tags in neat bundles. Each tag bore the unmistakable logo of Pacific Estate Liquidators. Caleb appeared at the patio door, squinting. "What is that?" June stepped forward and brushed a leaf off her shoulder. "That," she said evenly, "is for the real party." The words were light, airy, almost conversational, but they cracked the air like a gunshot. Marla was on the scene in seconds. heels stabbing the lawn with each step. "Excuse me?" she barked, holding her headset like it was about to explode. "You can't do this today, not during Tommy's party." The crew didn't look at her. They were busy unfolding tables and laying down plastic runners across the grass to protect the soil. "This is a private event," Marla shouted, now turning toward the crew. "You need to leave." The lead worker, a tall man in mirrored sunglasses, glanced briefly at June. She gave a short nod. He returned to work. June turned to Marla, voice calm. "Everything today is perfectly legal. Permits, insurance, vendor contracts, fully filed." Marla's voice pitched up an octave. "You planned this behind our backs?" "No," June said, reaching into her pocket and pulling out a neatly folded document. "I planned it right in front of you. You were just too busy building balloon arches to notice." She handed the paper to Marla, who snatched it and skimmed. Her face drained of color. Caleb appeared behind her, mouth open, brows pinched. "Grandma, what is this? What are you doing?" "I'm hosting," June said simply. "My house, my guest list, my rules." Across the lawn, guests were beginning to murmur. A few quietly slipped their phones into their purses. Someone whispered, "Is this an auction?" Tommy came jogging up with frosting on his face. "Mom, the bouncy house is deflating." Marla wheeled on him, flustered. "Not now, baby." "Hey," June said gently, crouching to his level. "You want to sit with me in the shade for a minute? I've got animal crackers and real lemonade." Tommy nodded, confused but game, and took her hand. June led him toward the canopy as the estate crew began placing item tags along the patio furniture. Teakwood chairs, the cast iron dining set, the copper fire pit everyone had Instagrammed last Christmas. The magician's assistant packed up the rabbit box and slipped quietly through the gate. Caleb stared after her, then looked at the form still in Marla's shaking hands. "We can't stop this," he said. "No," Marla hissed, eyes darting from the stanchions to the guests. "But we sure as hell better spin it." She turned back toward the yard, smearing on a brittle smile as if the show might still be salvageable. June handed Tommy a juice box, peeled back the foil with practiced ease, and glanced at the velvet ropes now crisscrossing her lawn like ceremonial boundaries. The boundary was real now, the side with the party, and the side with the owner. The auctioneer tapped the microphone once. It gave off a sharp metallic pop, louder than necessary, intentional. People turned. The bounce house sagged at one corner, half inflated now, a slow-motion metaphor deflating in real time. The magician was gone. The party playlist had faded to background noise no one noticed anymore. June stepped forward onto the makeshift platform the estate team had erected over the patio pavers. Her voice was clear and unhurried. "Thank you all for coming. This is a private estate liquidation. All items cataloged today are fully owned, all rights reserved." She paused, letting the weight of the words settle like dust. "If you're here for Tommy's party, you're welcome to stay. But do be aware, the real event has already begun." The first hammer dropped. Literally, a clean wooden gavel strike echoed as the auctioneer, a woman in a navy blazer and sun hat, lifted her voice over the stunned murmurs. "Lot 1, mahogany heirloom dresser, 4 drawers, dovetail joints, original brass pulls. Bidding opens at $100. Marla spun like a cornered animal. "This is insane," she shrieked, hands flailing. "You can't just sell our furniture." June didn't even flinch. "It's not yours." Caleb reached for Marla's elbow, his voice low but urgent. "Let's go inside. You're making it worse." Marla pulled away, but not before tossing a final glare toward June. "This is elder abuse. That's what this is." Another gavel strike. "Sold to Paddle 14 for $250. Madison, who had started filming on her phone, zoomed in as the auctioneer moved to the next lot. The china set from the locked cabinet no one ever used, but everyone bragged about. Lot 2. Fine porcelain, 12-place setting, gold trim. Starting bid $75. Before the number could be called, one of the estate staff approached Madison. "Ma'am, we'll have to ask you to stop recording. This is a closed event." Madison scoffed. "This is my family's house." The staffer remained stone-faced. "Not according to the title, or the event permit, or the power of attorney." Madison's phone was lowered, but her glare stayed locked on June, like she could peel the skin off her with her eyes. Meanwhile, guests who'd once hovered by the cake table were now inching closer to the auction area, whispering. Someone pointed at the antique sideboard. Another murmured, "Is that real Tiffany glass?" The china set sold for $600. Marla let out a strangled cry and turned on Caleb. "Say something. Stop this." He stared at her, then at June, then down at Tommy, who had wandered to the edge of the chaos, his party hat wilted and his face confused. June saw him first. She stepped off the platform, crouched beside him, and offered the gentlest smile she could find. "Hey, sweetheart." His bottom lip trembled. "Is it still my party?" June ran her thumb along his hairline, then brushed a crumb from his chin. "It is, but this part isn't about you. Okay?" He nodded, not understanding but somehow accepting. She pulled a small pack of animal crackers from her pocket and handed it to him. "Go sit in the shade with Elsie for a bit. I'll come find you after." Tommy wandered toward the canopy, munching quietly. Elsie emerged from behind the service gate a moment later, keys in hand. She gave June a small nod. "I've loaded your overnight bag and the safe box," she said, keeping her voice low. "Is there anything else you want?" "Not from here," June said. Elsie glanced at Marla, who was now pacing the lawn like a bride abandoned at the altar. "I'll circle the block. Call me when the first round closes." June smiled faintly. "Go slow. No need to rush." The next lot was already being called, the teak patio set. A couple from Incline Village raised their paddle without hesitation. Gavel strike. Sold. Caleb stood in the center of it all, blinking at the tables, at the tags, at the open box of juice pouches that no one seemed to want anymore. His voice cracked. "This is really happening." June returned to her seat beneath the canopy and crossed her legs slowly, her expression serene. A dragonfly passed overhead, and the fire pit, the same one Madison had posted about with her signature caption, "Wine by firelight, mutt cozy," went next. Lot 5. Bidding starts at $200. The gavel hadn't even dropped when Marla screamed again. By early afternoon, the patio had transformed into a gallery of memory in motion. Heirlooms paraded, tagged and claimed by strangers who walked through the yard with quiet reverence. June sat beside a folding table near the rose bushes, clipboard in hand, observing it all with the precision of a librarian overseeing final circulation. Marla, on the other hand, was unraveling. She chased guests down the side paths, offering fake laugh apologies and increasingly desperate explanations. "It's just a misunderstanding," she told one woman as she backed toward her Lexus. "She's not well, there's been confusion with the paperwork, it'll all be sorted out." The woman only nodded and gently squeezed June's shoulder on her way out. Another couple slipped their check into the collection box and whispered, "Long overdue." Marla turned to intercept them. "Wait, please don't go. We were going to do a balloon release after cupcakes." But no one stayed for the cupcakes. Inside, a flustered Madison hovered near the dining room, trying to redirect guests toward the snack table. "Who wants homemade lemon bars?" she called out like a late-night QVC host. Nobody answered. The auctioneer's voice rose again. "Lot 9, baby grand piano, walnut finish, tuned annually, bidding starts at $500. A hush swept the yard. June turned, her fingers tensing slightly. The piano that had been hers since 1964. Her husband's favorite to hear, her favorite to play. No one in the family had touched it in years. From the second row of bidders, a white-haired woman in an embroidered sun hat raised her paddle. June blinked. "Marilyn Fairchild," the auctioneer announced. "Winning bid 1,000 even." June's mouth softened into something between disbelief and delight. Marla stomped up. "You knew she was coming. You invited people to buy your own life out from under you?" June looked at her, calm, measured. "I didn't invite everyone, just the ones who deserve to be here." Caleb finally approached. His face was pale, confused, strangely young-looking beneath the weight of realization. "You're really selling everything?" he asked. June looked at him, eyes steady. "No," she said, "just what I bought." He didn't respond, just looked away, as if the answer had landed heavier than he'd expected. Madison stormed out the sliding glass door. "This is ridiculous. We need to talk to a lawyer." Marla snapped her fingers, as if she'd just been handed a lifeline. Yes, that's what we'll do. This is illegal. This is absolutely illegal." June said nothing. She reached into her canvas bag and calmly withdrew a manila folder with a red seal. She placed it on the patio table. "You'll want to read this before you make threats," she said. "Everything's notarized, reviewed, filed. This isn't a game, Marla." Marla snatched it open with trembling fingers and scanned the top page. Her shoulders sagged. Her lips moved silently through legal terms she didn't understand. At the bottom, June's full legal name, signatures, a seal from the state of Nevada, and one line in bold, "Power of attorney retained and reaffirmed as of April 12th. At that moment, a familiar shuffle of loafers on gravel echoed from the side gate. Mr. Becker entered the yard with a briefcase and a pair of sunglasses he removed with one fluid motion. "I heard there was confusion," he said, stepping forward. "Is this even legal?" Madison barked, standing between him and the auctioneer. "She's doing this without our consent." Mr. Becker raised an eyebrow. "You're not on the trust. There's no consent required." Tessa, Marla's younger sister and part-time paralegal, marched forward, arms crossed. "This feels like elder abuse." The auctioneer didn't even look up from her list. "She's the one with power of attorney, and the deed." Mr. Becker nodded. "And I suggest anyone questioning that speak with me after the event, not during." Silence fell again. Then the gavel struck once more. Lot 10, ornate stained glass floor lamp, starting bid $50. Marla watched as someone raised a paddle before the sentence was finished. June exhaled slowly, quietly, the sound of her life being valued, and finally chosen. But then from across the lawn, a child's voice cut through the tension. "Grandma!" Tommy ran toward her, holding a broken Nerf sword. Behind him, Madison's voice rose, sharp and angry. "Don't go to her right now." But Tommy kept coming. He reached June just as she stood to meet him. And in the hush that followed, his small hand grabbed hers, sticky, confused, but trusting. June looked up, directly at Madison, then Marla. "I told him he could always come to me." By late afternoon, the heat had started to settle into the walls of the house like smoke from an old fire. Guests had thinned to a slow trickle, some bidding quietly, others walking away with embossed receipts and carefully boxed purchases. But upstairs, that was where the real shift happened. At the base of the staircase, a laminated sign had been taped to the banister. "Upstairs Claude for inventory review. Authorized personnel only." It was official, printed and sealed with the Pacific Estate Liquidators logo. Caleb stood at the bottom step, phone in hand, blinking like he'd discovered a stranger's name on a family tree. "I just need to grab my laptop from the guest room," he said. One of the staffers blocked the stairs with a clipboard and a calm, practiced smile. "Sorry, sir. Upstairs access is limited during high-value appraisal. If you give me a description, we'll retrieve the item for you." Caleb scoffed. "I live here." June, who had quietly stepped into the hall, spoke from behind him. "No," she said, voice flat but final. "You sleep here. You never owned it." He turned. "Grandma." She held up a hand. "You were always welcome." "That's different." The clipboard staffer stood firm. Caleb hesitated, then stepped back. Upstairs, the auctioneer's assistant moved methodically through the master bedroom, tagging the hand-carved armoire and entering data into her tablet. June walked beside her, pausing at the closet door Madison had claimed 5 years ago like she'd signed a lease. She opened it slowly. Neatly folded stacks of June's old linens sat buried behind a forest of designer blazers. On the shelf above, a row of jewelry boxes, the kind that didn't belong to Madison. June reached for the first one, flipped it open. Her wedding band, still there. The second, a sapphire pendant her husband had given her on their 25th anniversary. The third, empty. She made a note. Downstairs, the hum of auction traffic continued. Someone clapped softly as the vintage record player was carted out. Laughter, brief, detached, flitted through the house like perfume. Then June's phone vibrated in her cardigan pocket. One new email, from Elsie, subject line, "Vault clear." She opened it and found a photo, an empty safe deposit box, the velvet lining pristine, all contents removed. In the corner of the frame, Elsie's hand giving a small thumbs up. June allowed herself the faintest smile. At the far end of the hall, Madison's voice floated up the stairwell. "I just want to talk to her. I'm trying to de-escalate." The staffer didn't budge. Madison's voice sharpened. "This is ridiculous. She's ruining a child's birthday." "For what?" Then another voice, Marla's, worn out, edging toward something close to begging. "Please don't do this in front of Tommy. He doesn't understand what's happening." June stood at the top of the stairs, fingers resting lightly on the banister. "You're right," she said, her voice soft but clear. "He doesn't understand yet. But one day he will." Marla looked up, exhausted, her makeup beginning to bleed into the corners of her eyes. "We're still family." June studied her, long and hard. "That word doesn't mean what you think it means." Another gavel struck in the background. Lot 14, king-size sleigh bed, cherry wood, includes mattress. Starting bid. Madison barked out a laugh. "You're seriously selling the bed you sleep in?" June met her eyes. "No," she said, "just the one you borrowed." Then she turned and walked back down the hallway, one hand brushing the wallpaper as she passed the closed door to the nursery, the one no one had mentioned in years. As she stepped into the guest room, her former room, a new buzz lit up her phone. Another message, same thread, Elsie, funds wired, full amount cleared, we're liquid. She sat on the bed, not tired, just finished. From outside, the yard looked smaller somehow, the boundaries tighter, the air thinner. And then a noise broke the stillness, a scream. Not Marla, not Madison. It came from outside, from one of the guests. June rose, walked to the window, and parted the curtain just enough. Down on the lawn, a folding table had collapsed, shattering a porcelain vase mid-handoff. Someone had cut themselves trying to grab it. A small crowd gathered. In the middle of it all, Mr. Becker stepped forward, calm as a surgeon. June didn't look alarmed. She picked up her phone, opened her contacts, and tapped Elsie's name. Bring the car around. She spoke it aloud as the ringtone buzzed. By dusk, the backyard looked like the ghost of itself. Tables stripped bare, furniture tags flapping in the breeze, empty boxes stacked along the fence line, waiting to be hauled off. Only the string lights overhead, dim, left over from a wedding Marla, once coordinated, still burned soft gold, pretending nothing had changed. But everything had. The auctioneer cleared her throat. Lot 21, vintage teak patio set, seating for 6, final round. The crowd had thinned to a core group of bidders and onlookers who knew they were witnessing something far beyond retail value. Paddle 12 went up, followed by a quiet nod from a woman in a linen vest, sold for $2,400. Next, the wine collection. Reds June had tucked away under the stairwell, untouched for years, once offered to guests who always preferred White Claw, sold. Then the built-in library shelves, the same ones Caleb used to pose in front of for LinkedIn photos, sold. And just like that, what had once filled the house with memory, objects yes but also evidence, was gone. June stepped onto the platform one last time, the auctioneer lowering her mic as she approached. June faced the lawn, the remaining guests, and what was left of her family. This, she said, raising her voice slightly, is how you clean a house, with truth. Some people clapped. Others just watched her, stunned into the kind of silence you can't manufacture. A young woman near the gate, maybe a journalism student, stepped forward with a press badge clipped to her tote. Would you mind giving a statement? June glanced at Mr. Becker, who gave the slightest nod. She turned to the reporter. Make it short. Make it plain. The woman raised her phone. Why today? June held her gaze. Because I was tired of being erased in the house I paid for. Click. Flash. Recorded. In the corner of the yard, Marla had sunk into a resin chair, missing one leg cap, mascara smudged, phone dead in her hand. Caleb stood beside her, mute, not reaching down to touch her shoulder, just watching. A son, a spectator. They didn't speak to June. They didn't say goodbye. They simply walked out the side gate, heads down, like guests overstaying at a wake. June didn't watch them go. Instead, she turned to Tommy, who had been sitting under the canopy coloring with a stubby blue marker. She crouched beside him, smoothing a piece of hair that stuck to his cheek. You get to choose one thing to keep, she said gently. Anything you want. His eyes lit up, scanning the boxes of toys set for donation. That fire truck, he said, pointing, the one that makes the loud siren. She pulled it from the box and handed it to him. The rest, she said, are going to kids who don't have as many toys as you do. Sound okay? He nodded solemnly, hugging the truck like it was treasure. She kissed his forehead. You did great today, sweet pea. Just then Mr. Becker approached, holding a clipboard with a single sheet left to sign. He handed her the pen. Last signature, June. Final confirmation. Are you ready? She took it without hesitation, and wrote her name in bold, fluid strokes. There, she said. He cleared his throat. Which means as of this evening, the house is officially vacated. Legally, financially, structurally. The student reporter perked up. Wait, the house too? Mr. Becker nodded. Going on the market first thing Monday. The woman raised her brows, impressed. You're walking away from all of it? June answered before he could. No, I'm moving towards something else. She walked back through the patio, through the hollow shell of what had once been a family home, now echoing with her own finality. In the foyer, she passed the thermostat Caleb had installed but never programmed. The sticky Live, Laugh, Love decal Madisons slapped over the hall mirror. The vase Marla had filled with fake eucalyptus and never once dusted. She paused at the base of the stairs, one last time, then stepped outside where Elsie was pulling up at the curb. The trunk was open, suitcase packed. The front passenger seat was already reclined. June didn't look back, but from the second-floor window a small face pressed to the glass. Tommy, fire truck in hand, watching her go. She raised a hand, slow and steady. He didn't wave back, just stared, silent and small. And as the screen door closed behind her with a final tired creak, the last gavel strike echoed from the yard. The welcome sign at Rose Ridge Retirement Cooperative read, "Live light, live free." The font was delicate, the gates were automatic, the air smelled faintly of rosemary and new carpet. June didn't carry much with her, just a single rolling suitcase, a fireproof lockbox, and a framed photo of herself and Elsie in their 20s, laughing barefoot on a California boardwalk. No one had packed for her. No one had been asked to. The manager met her at the curb with a clipboard and a warm handshake. "Miss Teller," she said, all smiles, "we've got your suite ready. Top floor, corner unit. View of the mountains." June followed her down a clean hallway lined with sage green wallpaper and low-humming sconces. Her new door, 3F, opened to soft light and silence. Not emptiness, stillness. Everything was in place. Bookshelves pre-installed, a plush recliner with lumbar support, a kitchenette with fresh lemons in a bowl, a window seat just wide enough for morning tea and unhurried reflection. The staff offered to help her unpack. She declined. She unzipped the suitcase slowly, deliberately, and placed the photo on the dresser. Then the lockbox in the closet. Then a simple notebook on the side table. No clutter, no crumbs, no one else's fingerprints. By the second evening, her new neighbors had started calling her Miss June, with a fondness she hadn't heard in years. "You settling in all right?" one asked as they passed in the hallway. "Like I was always meant to be here," June replied. 2 weeks later, Elsie arrived. 3 suitcases, a decorative cane she barely needed, and a bright red cooler full of homemade soup she insisted wouldn't fit in the freezer. "Hope your guest bed has decent back support," she said, rolling through the lobby like she was claiming territory. June smiled, held the door and said, "Only the best." They fell into an easy rhythm. Morning coffee on the terrace, evening walks around the koi pond. Crossword battles tied 3-3 by the end of the first week. Their laughter traveled easily through the walls, not disruptive, just alive. The outside world didn't vanish, but it did fade. Emails trickled in, then voicemails. Caleb wrote first, "We're trying to explain this to Tommy. He's asking questions." June waited a full day before replying. "Tell him I chose peace over pretend." No follow-up came. Then Marla called. Twice. Left voicemails she probably rehearsed a dozen times in the mirror. "Mom, you humiliated us. You've burned every bridge. What are people saying? You've ruined your reputation and ours. You made this into a show." June didn't respond. Didn't block her either. Let the words sit in voicemail purgatory, unheard but not invisible. Mr. Becker emailed a final document, confirmation of sale. Property closed, full cash offer, no contingencies, transfer complete. Attached a photo of the old mailbox, now empty. The keys dangling from a ribbon labeled new owner pickup. She printed the photo and folded it neatly into her notebook. One more page turned. Elsie knocked on her open door later that afternoon, holding 2 glasses of iced tea and a bowl of strawberries. "You ready to watch rich people argue on TV?" she asked. "Only if there's a prenup involved," June replied, easing into her chair. They settled into silence, the comfort kind. No tension, no eggshells, no swallowed apologies. June's phone buzzed once more on the table. A notification. Madison added to her Instagram story. Caption, "Family first, always." Image, an old photo from Tommy's last birthday. Balloons, cake, but June was cropped out. She clicked it, watched it for exactly 3 seconds, then swiped it away. Elsie looked over. "Still playing pretend?" "Only for their followers," June murmured. Outside the window, the sky turned from gold to bruised blue. Inside, June opened her notebook, uncapped her pen, and began jotting lines for something new. A letter, maybe. A mission statement. A beginning that didn't come from grief. Just then, a knock on her door. Firm, unfamiliar. June rose, her joints slower but her footing steady. She opened it. A girl stood there. Late teens, nervous, holding a manila envelope. "Are you Miss June Teller?" "I am. I got the scholarship. The Teller Fund? I just wanted to say thank you. In person." June's eyes softened. She stepped aside. "Then come in." Madison posted at 9:12 a.m. The image was filtered. golden, soft-edged, almost nostalgic in its artificial warmth. Tommy stood in front of the bounce house, arms outstretched, cake smeared across his cheek. Behind him, balloons floated in pastel clusters, and guests smiled in carefully curated angles. Everyone looked joyful. Everyone looked perfect. Everyone except June, because June wasn't in the frame. Madison had cropped the chipmunk costume at the shoulder, turning June into a disembodied blur of fur and forgottenness. In the caption, she wrote, "Family first, always, blessed tradition Tommy's Big Six." It garnered likes immediately. Comments rolled in. "So cute. Look at that cake. You guys throw the best parties." No one asked where the matriarch was. No one knew what had actually happened that day. June saw it as she was scrolling through her phone while waiting for her tea to steep. She didn't flinch, didn't even blink. She just saved the photo silently to her camera roll and set her phone down. Across the small round table in their shared kitchen nook, Elsie sliced strawberries into her yogurt with the kind of calm usually reserved for surgeons and monks. "She posted the mascot party?" Elsie asked without looking up. "Front and center," June replied. "Did she crop your ears off this time?" "Neck up," June said. "Didn't even make me a prop, just airbrushed memory." Elsie shook her head. "Well, shall we give them something real?" June reached into the drawer beside the microwave and pulled out the folder Becker had emailed 2 weeks ago. She opened the digital real estate listing on her tablet, saved the photos, then posted them one by one on her personal Facebook page, the one she rarely used, the one still followed by family, church members, and half the staff at the Reno Public Library. First, the empty living room, sun streaking across bare hardwood. Then the vacant hallway, every frame removed, every nail hole patched. Last, the front stoop, flower pots overturned, mailbox key dangling on a ribbon marked transfer complete. Her caption was brief. "Final, family last, full circle." She hit post. By lunch, the comment section had exploded. "Wait, what happened? Where's the furniture? That's your old house, right? Why didn't you tell anyone?" June ignored the pings. She poured 2 glasses of lemonade and brought one to Elsie, who had already propped her feet on the ottoman and was scrolling through her own phone, amused. "Looks like you broke the internet without saying a word," Elsie said. "I said everything," June replied, settling beside her. "The moment I sold the house." An alert buzzed. June glanced at her notifications. Caleb had seen the post. No comment, no message, just seen. Madison reposted the mascot photo again later that afternoon, this time to her story, trying to nudge the algorithm back toward the curated version of reality. She added a line of faux inspirational text. "Life is messy. Family is everything." Underneath it, someone had replied, "Didn't she sell the house out from under you?" The story disappeared within hours. June sipped her lemonade and closed the app. Her online life had always been quiet, tucked behind bookshelves and local charity newsletters. But in this case, silence wasn't erasure. It was proof. Elsie nudged her. "You think they'll spin it? The whole party meltdown, the auction, the walkout?" "Oh, they'll try," June said. "But a lie needs consistency, and they've never been good at that." Just then, a new comment popped up under her post, from someone she didn't know. A woman in her 40s, profile picture blurry, but the message clear. "My mother gave everything and got nothing. You're the first person I've seen who said no out loud." Elsie leaned over to read it. "Strangers," she said. "Funny how they see us clearer than our own blood." June nodded, then stood slowly. Her joints were stiff, but her stride was steady. "Come on," she said. "Let's take a walk. I feel like seeing something that hasn't been filtered." As they stepped out into the late afternoon breeze, Elsie looped her arm through June's. "Think they'll post again?" "Oh, definitely," June said, "but I won't be in the next frame either." The launch took place in a community center near the Washoe County Library. Modest, clean, lit by windows rather than spotlights. Folding chairs lined the walls, a coffee urn gurgled in the corner, and a table of Costco cookies sat beneath a handwritten sign. "The Teller Literacy Fund, First Award Ceremony." There were no photographers, no step-and-repeat banners, no family seating, because June hadn't invited any. She stood near the podium, a simple brushed metal lectern pushed slightly off-center, watching as a small but steady crowd filled in. Teachers, librarians, local board members, and the first recipient, a shy 15-year-old girl in a pressed Goodwill blazer, clutching a printed copy of her winning essay like it might blow away if she let go. Elsie stood beside June, beaming. "You really did it," she whispered. No, June said quietly. We did. The program began on time. A school counselor introduced June with a brief summary: retired librarian, lifelong advocate for free access to books, and, as one young applicant put it, proof you can tell the truth without shouting. There was polite applause. June approached the podium slowly but without hesitation. I'm not much for speeches, she said, but I'm here because I believe stories change people, and because I know what it feels like to be written out of one. Silence, sharp, respectful. I built this fund because too many children in this state are bright but unseen, capable but outnumbered. This isn't charity, this is balance, and this is only the beginning. She stepped aside. More applause, louder this time. Then the moment came. The counselor called her name, Aiden's sister, Layla Nguyen. Layla stepped forward, wide-eyed, nearly tripping on her boots. She handed her essay to Elsie, who took it with both hands like something sacred. Elsie cleared her throat and read, "Books made me brave before I ever felt safe. I read to forget how small my world was. Then I read to make it bigger. Miss Teller doesn't know me, but she gave me room to be real, not borrowed, not edited, not cropped out. Just me." The room exhaled together. Layla's shoulders dropped as if she'd finally set down something heavy. After the ceremony, a few reporters trickled in, not many, local outlets mostly. They took photos of the award banner, and one with Layla standing beside her new mentor, a college-bound volunteer who'd been assigned as her literacy coach. June stood back. Didn't pose. She didn't need to be in the center anymore. Across town, Madison was scrolling through a Google alert when she saw the headline: New Literacy Fund honors retired librarian who sold everything to give more. The photo was simple. The banner, a smiling Layla, and a quote from June that read, "You don't need to be in the picture to change the frame." Madison stared at the screen, then threw her phone onto the bed. "She's erasing us," she hissed, "like we were never part of anything." Caleb didn't look up from the sink, where he was rinsing Tommy's paint cups. "Maybe," he said finally, "we never really showed up to begin with." Madison glared at him. "You're seriously defending her?" Caleb didn't answer. Just set the rinsed cups in the dish rack and walked out of the room. Back at the community center, Layla approached June shyly. "My brother, Aiden, he wanted me to say thank you again. He said you talked to him once at the library after school." "I remember," June said. "He was the only one in the sci-fi section who checked for spelling errors in the catalog." Layla laughed. They stood together for a long moment. "You'll do well," June said. "Not because of the money, because you know how to see yourself." That night, Elsie printed the essay and pinned it on their fridge like it was a family photo. Beneath it, she scribbled in Sharpie, "Truth, full circle." June poured 2 glasses of wine and clinked hers gently against Elsie's. "To being seen," she said. Elsie raised her glass, and to never needing their permission again. A knock interrupted the moment. June looked toward the door. "You expecting anyone?" "Nope." June opened it. A teenage boy stood there, holding a beat-up paperback and a nervous smile. "Are you the one who gave my sister that scholarship?" June tilted her head. "Depends. She said I should bring this to you," he said, holding out the book. "Fahrenheit 451. I marked the part she underlined." June took it, eyes narrowing with curiosity. The page was dog-eared. The line read, "Stuff your eyes with wonder. Live as if you'd drop dead in 10 seconds. She looked back up. "Well," she said, "come in then." The notary arrived with a briefcase and no small talk. He was efficient, a former public servant, now freelancing for clients who like to keep things off the books and off the radar. He asked only once, "You're sure about this?" And June replied with a single nod. Her signature went down in bold, even strokes. No hesitation. Elsie sat nearby, knitting something indiscernible, pretending not to eavesdrop, but her needles paused every time the notary read a line aloud. "All physical property, accounts and assets are to be transferred in full to Elsie Margaret Reed, effective upon my death or incapacitation. No other beneficiaries named. All remaining proceeds from the sale of 2205 Glen Creek Road shall be donated to the Teller Literacy Fund, in perpetuity, as an endowment. No descendant, natural or adoptive, shall be entitled to challenge this document under Nevada state law." The notary flipped the last page. June signed it. Elsie signed next. Then the notary, sealing it with a quiet stamp that echoed too loudly in the stillness of the room. When it was done, June closed the folder, stacked it neatly with her binder of estate paperwork, and handed it to Becker's courier that same afternoon. There would be no revision to this revision. Across town, Caleb sat idling at the curb of their old street. Tommy was in the back seat, chewing the corner of a juice box, eyes half closed from summer heat. The house looked almost unrecognizable. The front lawn had been dug up, exposing fresh soil and a stack of new pavers. The mailbox had been replaced, sleek, steel, impersonal. A construction sign stood where the rose trellis used to be. Renovation by Blue Ridge Homes, EST. Completion. Fall. Inside, through the open garage, contractors were unloading cabinetry and what looked like a marble slab. Caleb didn't get out of the car. Tommy leaned forward. Is Grandma mad? Caleb rested his head against the steering wheel for a moment before answering. No, buddy, she just got tired. Back at Rose Ridge, June stood at her window, watching the koi pond below swirl in lazy loops beneath the bridge. Elsie poured 2 iced coffees and set them on the table with a fresh stack of Teller Fund thank you cards. They'd received 17 just that week from 4th graders, single moms, GED students. One note simply read, "You reminded me not to shrink." June opened the sliding glass door and stepped onto the balcony, the dry wind lifting the edge of her sleeve. She hadn't gotten tired, she'd just gotten done. Done pretending things could still be fixed if she just waited longer. Done trying to prove her usefulness to people who used her anyway. Done dressing up memories like they were something you could recycle into affection. When she came back inside, Elsie was opening the last envelope, a final confirmation from the county court addressed in bold. Revocation of previous testamentary documents finalized. She held it up. It's official. June exhaled. Elsie raised an eyebrow. Want me to dance on your behalf? Not necessary, June said. But feel free to hum something triumphant. That night she added one more entry to her notebook, a single page, centered. Legacy doesn't come from blood, it comes from choice. She closed the cover, placed it on the nightstand, and turned off the light. In Madison's house, the news arrived via a forwarded email from a lawyer she didn't recognize. She read it 3 times, then texted Caleb, "Did she really cut us out?" No reply. At the kitchen table, Caleb stared at the same email, the silence in his house louder than it had ever been. Tommy was asleep upstairs. Madison was pacing. He didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. One listing tucked between an irrigation dispute and a birth certificate amendment showed a public filing, amended will and testament, June Adeline Teller, no listed descendants. At 8:47 a.m., it was shared in a small Facebook group for local women over 60. By noon, it was trending. Elsie chuckled when she saw it on her phone. Well, she said, sipping her coffee, I guess you really did drop the final hammer. June just smiled. It wasn't a hammer, she said. It was an eraser. The envelope arrived on a Wednesday, tucked between an early bird travel catalog and a dental appointment reminder. No return address, just a pastel sticker on the seal. A balloon and a cupcake, faintly glittered. June held it at arm's length like it might leak sugar. Elsie looked up from the newspaper. Another senior dating ad? No, June said, already slicing it open with a butter knife. Worse. Inside, a folded card with embossed lettering and a tiny printed photo of Tommy. Mid-laugh, mid-air, mid-childhood. The caption beneath read, "You're invited. Tommy turns 7. Family picnic at Lakeside Ridge Park." Below it, "We'd love to see you, Grandma. Caleb and Madison." There was a smaller line at the bottom in cursive font, a passive plea trying to pass for warmth. Let's start again. June stared at the card for a moment too long, then tore it cleanly down the middle, not out of anger but precision, and dropped it in the recycling bin like a finished receipt. Elsie blinked once. Not even going to think about it? I did, June said, brushing off her hands, for exactly 3 seconds. That evening she pulled up the travel site bookmarked on her tablet and booked a cabin in Oregon, near Cannon Beach, close to the lighthouse she'd once visited in her 20s, where the wind slapped your face clean and the sea didn't care whose name you used to carry. 2 tickets, she told Elsie, no party hats, no cake. Elsie grinned. Do I get to wear my big floppy sun hat and pretend I'm mysterious? You do that on grocery runs, June said. But yes, absolutely. They left the next week, luggage light and spirits high. The cabin sat just above a rocky bluff, windows wide enough to frame the entire ocean. They cooked pasta, drank wine out of tin mugs, and laughed too loud when the firewood refused to catch. On the second night, they walked to the old lighthouse just before sunset, wind slicing their cheeks, gulls shrieking overhead like children with no curfew. It smells like salt and defiance, Elsie declared. June closed her eyes and tilted her face to the wind. Better than frosting and performance. The morning of Tommy's party, June made coffee just as the fog began to lift off the surf. She didn't check her phone, didn't open social media, didn't wonder if the bounce house held air or if the cake had her name on it this year. Instead, she pulled out her notebook, the one now soft with use and heavy with clarity, and wrote, "No is not cruelty, no is the border around my peace." The fire crackled beside them as they sat wrapped in blankets, two women, shoulders close, decades stacked between them like quiet armor. It was nearly noon when the message arrived. Elsie saw it first, her phone lighting up with the preview. "From Caleb," she said, tone unreadable. June took it slowly. "Read the short text. I'm sorry, I didn't know how to stop it." She stared at it for a long time, then typed her reply, "You just had to start." Then she turned off the phone completely. No typing dots appeared, no answer came, and June didn't wait for one. That night, a windstorm rolled in, rattling the windows and howling through the cracks like a chorus of ghosts. June stood barefoot on the wooden porch, wrapped in a quilt, watching the ocean churn black and endless. Elsie joined her with 2 mugs of hot cider. "Think he'll ever write again?" she asked softly. June took the mug, inhaled the steam. "If he does, he'll have to use the truth this time, not birthday invitations." They stood together, eyes on the dark horizon. A wave crashed louder than the others, salt and foam and fury, and June smiled, not because it had ended, but because something better had started. The parcel was small, barely the size of a bread box, but it was heavy, wrapped in archival-grade padding, and hand-delivered to the Nevada Museum of Women's History. June didn't go with it. She'd already said her goodbyes. The box contained a single item, a silver compact mirror from the 1930s, passed down through 3 women, and pried once, just once, from June's dresser during an argument no one remembered but her. The museum's registrar opened it carefully, white gloves on, and found a handwritten note inside. "Belonged to someone who knew what she was worth. Please display accordingly. Signed only, J.T." The compact was slated for display in the Western Women and Quiet Revolutions exhibit. Back at Rose Ridge, June was assembling her new chair. Not from a catalog, not a hand-me-down. A high-backed soft leather recliner, caramel brown, butter smooth, with a swivel base and side pocket deep enough for her glasses, a journal and a hard peppermint or 2. Elsie watched from the kitchenette, leaning against the counter with her arms crossed and an amused smile. "Look at you," she said, "buying a throne for the queen." June snapped the final cushion in place and sat down slowly. The chair groaned with comfort. Every queen needs a seat, she picked herself. On the side table, a new envelope waited. Different handwriting, neat, youthful. June opened it. Inside, a letter from Layla Nguyen. "Miss Teller, the books you gave me weren't just pages, they were exits. Thank you for not giving your name to people who didn't use it right. You made me feel seen." June read it twice, then folded it carefully and tucked it into the front of her notebook. She didn't cry, but her eyes softened in that way people only recognize after losing too much and reclaiming more. That afternoon, Elsie called from the community garden. "You ready?" she asked. June held up the canvas tote containing one last item, a paper grocery bag, marked costume storage, sealed tight and tucked beneath her bed for months. Inside, the mascot head. Still fuzzy, still faintly sour from sweat and foam. She didn't hesitate. Out in the garden, a small metal burn drum had been set up behind the gazebo. Elsie lit the starter log. June didn't speak. She placed the mascot head inside gently, like putting a joke to rest. The fabric caught fast, curling and blackening at the seams. One foam ear drooped, then collapsed. Smoke spiraled upward, clean and quiet, disappearing into blue sky. They didn't cheer. They didn't pose for pictures. They just watched. The last prop, the last role she didn't choose. Ash settled softly into the mulch. Elsie knelt and stirred it with a trowel. "Good for the soil," she said. "Burned nonsense always is." June stood beside her, hands in her pockets, coat unzipped against the breeze. She looked down at the gray scatter, then past it, to the roses just starting to bloom, tight buds, unopened, fierce in their waiting, and she said, with no drama, no triumph, just clarity, "They dressed me like a joke. I left them with the bill.